Happy Friday, Year 4. Welcome back to another English lesson with Miss Borhan. I want you to write down the long date, Friday 26th of June 2020, and the LI to understand what fantasy fiction is. Well done, everyone. So fantasy fiction is a genre of writing in which the plot could not happen in real life. The plot usually involves witchcraft or magic, or it takes place on an undiscovered planet of an unknown world. Their plots can involve witches, wizards, magicians, mythical and animal creatures talking like humans. So now I want you to pause and think if you can think of any books that fit this description. Excellent. I want you to write it down and then we can go through this in more detail. Magical fantasy. In a magical fantasy, you see a character having magical powers, or a strange magical object becomes the subject of the narrative. And examples of such books are Charlie and the Chocolate Factory by Roald Dahl. So can you think of any more fiction books that are magical fantasy? Excellent. Toy fantasy. In toy fantasy stories, narrators bring their beloved toys to life and transform them into animated beings that can live, talk, think, breathe, love, and behave like human beings. You would see modern toy fantasies in picture book format. So examples of this are Winnie the Pooh or The Adventures of Pinocchio, and if you could think of any other toy fantasies, you can write it down. Yep, alternate worlds and enchanted journeys. In these fantasies, you see the leading character undertaking a journey to an alternate world or a fantasy world. So examples of this are Alice Adventures in Wonderland, Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone by J.K. Rowling, or Gulliver's Travels. So in Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone, what alternate world exists in that book? So if you've read the book or even if you've watched the films, you would know that the alternate world is Hogwarts and the magical world that the wizards and witches live in. Quest or heroic fantasy, or is also known as high fantasy. These fantasies involve adventures with a search, a quest, and motive. While this quest could be a pursuit for a higher purpose, like justice and love, or getting a reward like hidden treasure or a magical power, the conflict of heroic fantasies focuses on the struggle between good and evil. So such examples are The Lord of the Rings, The Hero and the Crown, or The Book of Three. And if you could think of any more books that focus on the struggle between evil and good and there's an adventure in there, you can write it down. So there's many more fantasy genres, but these are the main ones that we're going through. So there's also animal fantasy. Animal fantasy tells tales about animals behaving like human beings, speaking, experiencing emotions, and having the ability to reason. So such as The Wind in the Willows, Charlotte's Web, The Tale of Peter Rabbit. Okay, so what category do you think the miraculous journey of Edward Tulane would fall under? So think about the story carefully and think about all the different types of fantasy stories that we just went through. And I want you to write it down. So it falls under toy fantasy. Well done if you got that correct. I mean, this was a bit confusing. So if you got animal fantasy, I understand how you reached that decision as well, but if you just look at the descriptions between toy fantasy and animal fantasy, Edward Tulane would fall under toy fantasy because Edward is a China doll. Remember, so although it is an animal, it is a rabbit, he is a rabbit, he is a China doll, and remember he doesn't move or anything like that, which is why this is a toy fantasy. And what category would The Magic Faraway Tree fall under? Now, this is a book that I've been reading with my class, with Mandela class. So if you're in Mandela class, you can answer this question now. From what we've read so far, what category do you think it would fall under? It would fall under alternate world and enchanted journeys because the characters, they go to different worlds, if you remember, and they experience different things and they have loads of magical journeys. So well done if you got that correct, Mandela class. Okay, so let's see what your task is now. You need to go on this link over here where I'm just going to put an arrow, and then you need to watch the short animation, and it's called Bubbles. So let's use this short description. So when it all seems blue, happiness may be close by. If you just look closely at your surroundings, perhaps you will find it. Gabby, so Gabby's the character, is walking on a beach and finds a bottle of bubbles. When she blows it, she gets transported into fantasy. She has fun riding on bubbles and beats people and things on her way. So for your task, I want you to write about one of the adventures that Gabby goes on. So when she's riding her bubbles, she's transported into fantasy, she's transported into different places, and you have to write about one of the different places that she is transported to and write about her adventures. And I want you to be very creative, get creative. Don't forget to use your adjectives, your metaphors, your similes. So this link will be in the description box below, and it will also be uploaded to the Year 4 online learning platform. So remember to first watch the clip before you start writing. So over here, there's the excerpt from Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone. So remember, this is fantasy writing, so we can see an example of how your writing should look like and what language should be used. So let's read it out together. Howling with pain, the troll twisted and flayed its club, with Harry clinging on for dear life. Any second the troll was going to rip him off or catch him a terrible blow with the club. Hermione had sunk to the floor in fright. Ron pulled out his own wand, not knowing what he was going to do when he heard himself cry the first spell that came into his head. Wingardium Leviosa. Okay, so this is just a short excerpt, just so that you can get an idea of how your writing should look like, and see if you can notice any adjectives in here. Well done. What language is used over here? And over here, you have a word bank that you can use in your writing. So it depends on if there's any witches or wizards, you can use those words. Just depends on what adventure Gabby goes on, so you can make it up, get as creative as you want. So fantasy stories about imaginary places with lots of weird, wonderful and magical characters. So you can use these words to help you write your own fantasy story. So this will all be uploaded to the school website as well. And this is also for settings, word bank for settings. And these are just some adjectives, some general adjectives that you can also be using in your writing, describing people, objects, feelings, time. So once you're done that, you can take a picture of your work and email it over to year4@grange.harrow.sch.uk. So, well done everyone, and I'm looking forward to reading your beautiful creative pieces of writing.